Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, the official translation of One Piece chapter 1003 is out. You guys know how we do the video. Talk about the official translation compared to the fan translation. Note any difference. Talk about literally anything at all. And then round out the video with comments from you guys. So once again, there was only one difference in translation this week. Guys, I'm usually so good. I clarify everything, alright? I say something, but we should wait for the official just because it's a translation, so it might be an error. This week, I didn't do that. So, I spent a large portion of my first reaction talking about Zoro telling the audience, I guess, that he let his guard down. And this, of course, led to Kaido sucking Luffy up and then swallowing him. And the wording of that being a key or a tip-off to what Oda's intentions were. And then the official translation comes out and, wow, it's gone. Sometimes talking about the chapter twice has its downsides. That being said, nothing really changes, because whether or not Zoro said that he let his guard down, the fact remains that he let his guard down. I really like the idea of Oda just straight up saying it because it makes it more clear and more relevant. But he didn't straight up say it, instead it's just simply implied by what happened in the story. Zoro gets distracted by Kaido's technique, he whines about it, and in this moment he loses Luffy. He lost Luffy because he wasn't fully paying attention. So let's get in the comments. I don't think Zoro is scared to lose. I think that he is scared that losing in the New World has way too high stakes. Like, losing right now means not completing his dreams, and Luffy is too easygoing to give a shit about it. I don't really mean to dunk on you here, but basically what you said is, I don't think that Zoro is scared to lose. But losing has severe consequences for which Zoro is scared of. So his fear of losing makes sense. Just because it makes sense doesn't change the point at all. Clarifying this and sort of removing it from your comments, we agree. The point is that Zoro is scared of something, that he is feeling fear right now. And it seems pretty apparent to me based on his body language, the way that he's acting over the past, well, really since Punk Hazard. That's when the first clues were dropped, but it seems to have been heightened at least since Zo. But the idea of Zoro being afraid of defeat or losing is nothing new. This was a talking point during the Mihawk fight. I also think that the Mihawk fight is interesting because in that fight, Zoro just went into it, you know? Mihawk was there, it's like, alright, I'm gonna fight you, and it seemed as though at the beginning of the fight he had all the confidence in the world that he could actually fight on par with Mihawk, and it was a huge wake-up call. In the middle of the fight, he's like, I'm not even close to this dude. And so we've progressed in the story, and he's kind of learned from this. I don't think that the Zoro of today would make the same mistake. He has an idea, at least, of where he stands compared to the top tiers of the world. These guys are the best. Mihawk probably respects them. Maybe Mihawk even talked about them. If Zoro already thought that he was the strongest swordsman, I think that this is something that we would already know. That maybe he might even be seeking out Mihawk. This is actually a pretty unique situation, a difference between Zoro and Luffy. Luffy never really fought Rayleigh, or Rayleigh's power never seemed to be a thought that concerned Luffy. Whereas Zoro's constantly chasing strength, and so by the time he left the island, he wasn't the strongest swordsman. And that must have been abundantly clear to him. So it's the purpose of the journey to sort of fight opponents and continue to get stronger. So by the end of the journey, you can then return to the Mihawk fight with maybe more confidence, greater powers, in order to become the strongest. But if you know exactly how strong Mihawk is, the difference between Mihawk and yourself, and then you put the Yonko on, say, Mihawk's level, or maybe even above Mihawk's level, you can see how this might influence Zoro's thoughts. It's very reasonable. Someone who fears defeat, who claimed that they will never lose again, but is also realistic, is at a bit of a crossroads here. Zoro's probably thinking much different from Luffy. Everything needs to go perfect in order for my dreams and everybody else's dreams to be achieved. And so that is why it is important for Zoro and Luffy and everybody else to be on guard and perfect all the time. And it's frustrating to Zoro when that doesn't happen for both himself and others. Which is why he advises Luffy to not go to Whole Cake Island and potentially provoke another Yonko and Big Mom, because Zoro's already thinking about where he stacks up with one Yonko, where the crew stands up with one Yonko, let alone two. Zoro's power scaling says 2 Yonko. Nope, not gonna work. And I can guarantee you every reasonable, rational character in the story would agree with him. CP0, in fact, this chapter, agreed with him. So if Zoro thinks to himself, or mentally is sort of strangling Luffy, trying to get him to understand, like, do you understand just how powerful our foes are? Like, this thought occurring to Zoro makes sense to everybody. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is that is not Luffy. You say that Zoro fears losing, fears defeat because of the potential consequences, and that makes sense. Absolutely. Do you know who doesn't fear that? Luffy doesn't. Do you know why Luffy doesn't fear that? Because Luffy has faith in himself and fate. Luffy doesn't rationalize himself versus his opponents and make strategic moves or anything like that. He just thinks that he's going to progress and he's going to become the Pirate King. It's, thought from point A to point B, the middle, we'll see. But me becoming the king of the pirates is inevitable. Doesn't matter the circumstances, the odds, or who I've got to beat up to do it, it's going to happen. I don't think that Zoro has the same level of faith in himself. And I think that Zoro fears failure more. But this is kind of the idea of the debate here and why it's so interesting, and I suppose you could fall on either side, but I fall on Luffy's side. They didn't get here by giving in to their fears. I was rewatching the anime recently. There's a scene kind of related to this. They're going down Reverse Mountain. Obviously, Laboon was there. And so they're trying to dodge Laboon and go around him and just sort of sneak by him. It's like, oh, don't want to mess with the whale. And when Luffy sort of stopped the ship as it was going up to Laboon, the figurehead hit Laboon and it fell off. Luffy got real mad and he punched Laboon in the eye. And everyone on the crew, including Zoro, was like, what are you doing? Like, are you trying to get us killed? And then so Laboon sucked everybody inside of himself. But the moral of the story here was, did Luffy do something smart? No, he didn't. But what was the result of Luffy's stupidity? A reward. They became friends with Laboon and Crocus. Luffy's MO is to not avoid danger, and that has paid off almost every time. And that's kind of how One Piece is gone. So Zoro trying to convince Luffy of the dangers of their opponents doesn't really accomplish anything for him. Or it shouldn't. Luffy's always believed that if I die, I die. I guess I was wrong. But I kind of went down the rabbit hole here, but the point is that yes, Zoro does fear something. We agree on that. In contrast with Luffy, it becomes very interesting. Worthy of pointing out. It's not so easy just to say, well, Zoro's going to enlighten Luffy. Next comment, Big Mom loses points because she attacks Luffy while he's down? There are no rules in Pirates Battle, Joy Boy. Big Mom is smart. Debatable. She goes after the biggest threat with an attack she knows will work this time. Except it didn't. I say she gains points for being such a legitimate threat. Now see, I have been misquaffed, alright? She loses cool points. Cool points are not the same as just general points or power scaling or anything. Is it necessarily intelligent or a smart move for Kaido to kill the guy that distracted Oden and allowed Kaido to defeat Oden? No, because that was perhaps a valuable subordinate. However, Kaido did kill him and he gained cool points. Katakuri stabbed himself in the middle of the battle because of honor. General points, smart points, no. Cool points, yes.
Oh yeah.
Big Mom seizing the opportunity when Luffy literally can't fight, you lose cool points. But hey, Captain Jack Sparrow would be proud. Next comment, Kid has stayed back the whole fight. He used to take me as someone who would fight using guts alone. I believe when he lost his arm to the red-haired pirates, it was because he was too reckless. But I don't see the Supernova winning without risking it all. That's what makes the Kid moment so important when talking about Luffy's power. He is inspired to get stronger and do something he's never tried in order to take on Kaido up close. I don't know if I necessarily fully agree. I do think that there's some truth here, but at the same time, I think that Kid has been, by nature, much more cautious than somebody like Luffy. Because even going back into the time skip, right, Kid would never have messed with the Celestial Dragons. So I felt like then that Luffy inspired Kid to be a little bit more reckless than he normally was in that case too, kind of like you're speculating here. Unlike Luffy, Kid had a big bounty not for huge scores, escaping from Impel Down, attacking the world government in Enies lobby. Kid had a big bounty because he attacked innocent people. At least comparing these two, it's pretty clear which one was more reckless. That's not to say Kid might have been more reckless than many of the other Supernova like Law, etc., but we're all comparing this to Luffy. In fact, I think that the only reason that Kid is here in this fight right now is because of Luffy. I think that anybody else, Kid would have just simply left. But Luffy makes him look bad. So very similar to you, but also a little bit different to you, I kind of take a different path with Kid. I think that Kid started off as not that reckless, maybe more reckless than some, but not that reckless. And then Luffy, after Marineford, really inspired Kid to try and do better, try and accomplish more. That led Kid to Shanks, which was probably the most daring moment so far in his life, and then he lost badly and it reverted Kid back to his normal state. So the next time that Kid confronted a Yonko and Big Mom, he never actually faced Big Mom, nor was that his intention. His whole plan was to sort of attack Big Mom in a defensive way. Hit and run, you might say. The frustration for Kid being that neither of these two instances, fighting Shanks or Big Mom, got him any notoriety or recognition pretty much whatsoever. Caribou doesn't even know how Kid lost his arm. He hadn't even heard about Kid confronting Shanks. So he just assumed that Kid lost his arm fighting Big Mom. But really here, the difference between your opinion and my opinion isn't all that big. And really, the heart of your question is, it's time for Kid to do something, to shine, to grow. And I agree. I have a lot of fun dunking on Kid because it's just fun to dunk on Kid. That being said, taking out all jokes and all bias, it's like this is the time for Kid to do something, especially when Luffy is out. No hockey for 10 minutes. I mean, Kid's got to pull his weight if everyone's going to survive. Is it possible Luffy here has maybe inspired Kid to unlock a different kind of power, maybe a more risky power? Possibly, I hope so. That would be pretty incredible foreshadowing. Next comment. There's a panel in this chapter that shows the rooftop and 3 doors with 2 of them open. I think Oda is foreshadowing that at least one more person is going to aid in the fight against the Yonko. My money is on Yamato or maybe Sanji. This is something I kind of overlooked when I first read the chapter, but when you go back and you reread it, this panel is just very, very out of place. It's conspicuous. It's literally a panel, nothing else going on, of 3 doors. 2 of them are open, 1 of them is not. I agree with this comment. I think that Oda is going to make this panel important. Foreshadowing of another person arriving to the rooftop. King of Brawl here mentioned Sanji. I don't think it's going to be Sanji. I think that Sanji needs to fight a Commander Jack, Queen, or King. I mean, somebody's got to fight them, especially Jack. Nobody's fighting Jack at the moment. If we're assuming that Sanji isn't going to fight Black Maria and that instead ends up being Robin. I think that Yamato here is a far better guess just because I imagine that it's necessary for Yamato to have a confrontation, with his father. I feel like another good guess here would be somebody like King. I wonder about Momonosuke. Obviously, there's a plan to capture Momonosuke, and so I always kind of imagined, right, and the CP0 almost highlighted in this chapter, the fights down below are just as important as the fights up above. So if we do lead to a situation of a loss, then it would be very impactful, it would be a very intimidating, nervous, cool moment for, instead of an ally appearing out of this door, it is in fact another top-tier enemy, and they've won their battle. In this case, King doing something like this would mean that King defeated Marco, which is something that I do believe will happen. I also think that you shouldn't ignore the placing of this panel in this particular chapter. What was the big reveal? This chapter really, it was the presence, the existence of CP0 and their interest to sort of take advantage of this fight in order for their own gain. So maybe Oda here is hinting that CP0 is the one that's coming out of the door. They're the faction left here that hasn't yet joined the battle. But yeah, obviously at this point it's all guesswork, but I'm with this comment that this unopened door, Oda included this for a reason, and the door will be opened eventually. Somebody else will appear on the roof. Next comment, seeing the squirrel girl playing that instrument makes me think that Act 3 is about to end very, very soon. I don't know if I think that it's going to end soon necessarily, or that implies that, but I think that we are going to know that once Act 3 ends, who's going to be ushering in Act 4. I do think it's going to be the Squirrel Girl, and I've actually been thinking about this for some time beforehand, like, Hiyori's got to do something. So it doesn't make any sense anymore for her to be the one playing the Simiasin to usher in Act 4, because she should be doing something, fighting something, infiltrating, something like that. So really, the furthest that I take this is just evidence that Hiyori isn't just going to be sitting on the sidelines wearing her mask, playing her instrument. She's here somewhere, or somewhere else doing something important. Next comment, got a feeling at some point Kid will give Luffy a metal armor, similar to the fight with Magellan. This is an interesting comment, honestly, just because if Luffy was actually wearing metal armor, then Kid would be able to control him and potentially even protect him, even when his haki runs out. Now, is Kid willing to sacrifice his pride in order to do that, similar to what Law has been complaining about in the last couple chapters? I don't know. But if we're trying to avoid Luffy becoming a major liability when he uses Gear 4, this would be a great way. As for like actively using the armor, I'm not too sure about that because the armor made sense in the fight versus Magellan. You touch Magellan, you basically die. That's not a good situation. It's not, the fight here with Kaido is not the same. Next comment, who's the girl all the way on the right with CP0? You address the girl on the left with the eye, but not her. Does she look like Komurasaki or Robin? So I got a lot of these comments. If you go to the panel with the CP0 in the room, there's a geisha to the right who looks a lot like Robin. Like, let's just be honest here. I don't think that it's Robin, but it looks a lot like Robin. The problem is that I don't think that it's Robin. I don't think it makes sense for it to be Robin. We know Robin is busy. She doesn't have a connection with CP0. She's not a traitor. She wouldn't know that they're there because she knows everything that the other Strides know. It makes zero sense for this to be Robin. As for Komurasaki, I just simply don't think that it looks like Komurasaki. So I'm going to chalk this up to sometimes in One Piece females look very similar. But a ton of people pointed this out. The resemblance to Robin is very striking. Next comment, I like how the CP0 agent said it was impossible to beat two Yonko at once, kind of reinforcing the theory that Luffy is a sort of miracle worker and makes the impossible possible. I know that the discussion sometimes gets very convoluted, but I have from the very beginning thought that Luffy eventually, maybe not in the first round, but eventually defeats both Big Mom and Kaido. Just not in a straight up way that a lot of people sort of assume. I think that Kaido is defeated in a straight up fight, maybe not just Luffy, but the allies. And then Big Mom is defeated in a very, very roundabout way. Defeated in a way perhaps similar to Boa Hancock, which I do consider to be a defeat, even if Luffy never punched her. But in the official translation, CP0's wording is this: if by some chance 2 of the 4 emperors should fall, there would be no telling what might happen to the world next, but this is an unnecessary concern. I take this to mean that 2 Yonko are going to fall, which is really what I've thought the entire time. By the end of this arc, both Kaido and Big Mom are defeated and killed, just not in the way that CP0 is sort of calculating or anticipating. But I do feel like that CP0 here is saying this, suggesting the idea to us. It makes both Yonko's defeat here more justifiable. This is evidence to me. And Oda is reminding us that if such a thing were to occur, that it would have huge ramifications on the world in general. Next comment, hey JB, I really think that there's allied forces missing if the Strats are to win this raid. If you were a betting man, who would you think that would be, if at all? My first answer here, the most obvious answer to me, that is obviously going to be controversial in general, is the Big Mom Pirates. I'm still on team Big Mom Pirates, long term join the Grand Fleet, their leader Katakuri whenever Big Mom goes down, conflict between Big Mom and her children. Big Mom Pirates divide, but some of them become allies and they're already here, they just haven't joined the battle. Along the same or similar line of thinking, I think that Capone, Lola, and Chiffon are on their way, and this will matter to Big Mom's plotline. I think the answer probably most people want to hear is the Grand Fleet. If the Strats lose, Grand Fleet, I think, will be here. I think that they'll be able to see Luffy's Vivre card. I also think about the Vinsmoke family. They were obviously defeated at the end of Whole Cake Island. I don't think that they're dead. That doesn't make any sense to me, so they'll be around, and probably with the Big Mom Pirates. I imagine them being kept in Mondor's prison book. And Oda could justify the Big Mom Pirates bringing them as a sort of flex on Sanji and the Strats, like, you were trying to save these people, but we got them anyway. And to go even further in this, just because we want to add details here, I think that Judge has his life force taken because Judge can feel fear, whereas the children have not, because they don't experience that emotion. And then of course there's the various factions that might be involved. This battle becomes a world affair. I'm talking like, this is Marineford 2.0, therefore Marines will show up, maybe not necessarily as allies, but talk about the Revolutionary Army. If Revolutionary Army shows up, then they'd probably be allies. Blackbeard and Shanks, that sort of thing. If I was a betting man, I'm betting heavily that there will be other factions involved, both allies and enemies. And speaking of, next comment, if CP0 is still here, does that mean the transaction with Orochi went through and Vegapunk is on his way to Wano? This is something that I see happening. My headcanon over the past year or so has been essentially that CP0 doesn't want to lose Vegapunk, but they also wanted to carry out this agreement with Orochi. We know after this chapter that CP0, no matter who wins this fight, allied to no pirates here. So they still bring Vegapunk, sort of pretend like they're going to follow through with the agreement, but with Vegapunk they also bring the SSG, whatever new technology that Fujitora talked about that should be game-changing, along with Marines in general. Their plan being, in my mind, to find a way to infiltrate Wano, the barriers around Wano itself, in order to spark a war with Kaido, which the Strides have made very, very easy now. I think Oda even said a few years ago that Vegapunk's gonna be in the story soon. I truthfully believe that maybe not necessarily during the fight, but after the fight is when we get a conversation with Vegapunk, however the hell that would happen. We need the Strides to interact with Vegapunk. Their paths need to cross. Next comment, so Kaido one-shots Luffy in their first fight. Now Luffy can put up a bit of a fight, but didn't even seriously damage Kaido after giving it all in Gear 4th. Kaido that wasn't even in his strongest form until now, but this dude is saying that Luffy in Gear 4th could beat anyone if it wasn't for the time limit. Lol, facepalm. This is so dismissive of all the various gains that Luffy has made up until this point, plus the additional gain of Gear 4th having an unlimited duration. I want to ask everybody this. How the hell does Garp fight as an equal to somebody like Kaido or Big Mom? Why is he held up to the same standard? Or other characters in the story that we also assume don't have devil fruits? Odin, Roger, maybe even Shanks. These guys are not physical freaks of nature, right? They're humans, even if they're top tier humans like Garp. Garp is of the same blood as Luffy. When Luffy gets older, assuming that he stays in shape and continues working, he'd be just as fast and strong as Garp is, even without his devil fruit. These people could fight on par with someone like Kaido or Big Mom because of Haki. Kaido and Big Mom do not have future sight. They probably also don't have advanced armament. If you're balancing out the power scaling, Kaido is a monster. He is a freak of nature with a insanely powerful devil fruit in terms of pure speed and strength. How do you even the odds? It's Haki. What's being dismissed here is what a devil fruit adds to somebody who is already, very close to a top tier human in terms of physical strength and ability. Luffy grows up. He's 30 years old. He looks just like Prime Garp, but he also has the Railroad Devil Fruit, which gives him the ability to go Gear 4th, which makes him even stronger and even faster. But Luffy's also going to have the same level of Haki. So at this point in Luffy's life, I'm saying that Luffy is considerably stronger than Prime Garp. In base form, Luffy may not be fast enough in order to dodge Kaido's attacks. In Gear 4th, he is fast enough. We already know that Luffy can damage Kaido. It may take a long time, but he can damage him. He also has Future Sight Haki. Kaido does not. In a long, drawn-out fight, if Gear 4th's duration was infinite, I do believe, very strongly, Luffy would win. And finally, we have the last comment. JB says, my own personal theory leads to Waffle, but that's not important. I say, nah. The fuck you mean, not important? So I guess I'll expound on this because it's kind of a fun theory. Basically what we're talking about here is CP0 is interested in the weapons that Wano produces, or was interested in it, but maybe they're not as interested as they were. They've got a backup plan for producing weapons, and my thoughts lead to Waffle. Because, as we know, Waffle has the ability to eat various things and he combines them together, and so during the cover story, Waffle's story, essentially since Drum Island when he was defeated, he became destitute, he became homeless, and then he found out that he could make something cool, and then he started building toys, and everybody liked his toys because they had a unique property to them, because they were made by him eating things, essentially, and now he's founded his own kingdom on top of this toy metal empire. But I suppose the important takeaway here is that the metals that Waffle produces, called Waffle metal, is it's a unique kind of substance, and Waffle can do this because of his devil fruit. So Waffle, being the person that he is, I could totally see him making an agreement with the world government to secretly, covertly produce weapons in the black market. In fact, I believe that we have this lingering question of how exactly did Waffle was granted a kingdom based on the success of his toy company. The world government gave him a kingdom and a spot on the Reverie. Already sounds pretty shady if you ask me. The timing here I think works out extremely well as well. The world government has been relying on Wano presumably for years, but Waffle went through this journey during, the events 2-year time skip, essentially. So it would make some sense for them to not have completely switched over to Waffle, or maybe Waffle wasn't ready until, recently. But now that he's here, his abilities, his agreement, they have a backup plan. And maybe at some point Oda throws this into the story as like a fun detail, and maybe we get the chance to beat up Waffle again. But yeah guys, that is pretty much all I had to say today. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.